The Supreme Court has questioned and expressed disbelief at a petition which alleged that 43 Rohingyas were forcibly deported by Indian government and thrown into international waters. The Supreme Court called out the timing of this plea and called the petition full of fanciful ideas. The Supreme Court refused to stay further deportation of the Rohingyas. The plea was filed by Colin Gonsalves, who referred to the UN Human Rights Office of High Commissioner report. The Supreme Court also called out the UN Office report, stamping the fact that people outside cannot dictate our authority and sovereignty. Ambassador Bhashwati Mukherjee, former diplomat, is joining us live. Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is also live with us. Ashwini Dubey, advocate on record, Supreme Court, joins us. Firoz Bakht Ahmed, former Chancellor, MANUU, also with us live. Let me bring you in here first. Ambassador Mukherjee, what do you make of the Supreme Court's throwing out of this petition?
Well, it's not for me to pass judgment on the Supreme Court. But I do believe that they've taken the right action, because a PIL is not intended for frivolous purposes, and a PIL cannot be filed on a mechanical basis day in and day out. If a PIL has been rejected, for the same reason another PIL cannot be filed. And Mr. Colin Gonsalves, who is quite well known for his PILs, should be, I'm sure, is fully aware of that. The Supreme Court, in addition, when it threw out the earlier PIL, it took into account the reason why the government of India, for reasons of national security, have decided to deport these illegal Rohingyas. I can tell you, coming from Bengal, which is my home state, that these Rohingyas have freely infiltrated into Bengal, and then from Bengal they have spread out all over India, including in Delhi. They are extremely aggressive. Many of them are involved in all kinds of clandestine activities. In my perspective, they are a danger to national security. I don't see any reason why a country that is overpopulated and already has so many other problems should be taking in Rohingyas who are not Indian citizens, who have no business to be here, and who should be deported. Moreover, I wanted to also add to that if you look at the history of Rohingyas, that I know very well, being a history student, these were Arab traders in the 10th century who used to freely roam from the undivided India border into Myanmar and back. They belong to Myanmar, and the United Nations should ensure that the Myanmarese government facilitate conditions for them to return to their homeland, which is Myanmar. It is not India at all. It has never been India. What they do now is that they infiltrate through Bangladesh into Bengal and then spread out. And they are a threat to our national security. And we should pick up each and every Rohingya in India who's here illegally and deport them. Just as President Trump says that he wants to make America great again, and that he will do whatever is required to keep America safe. I don't see any reason why India is any way less important than the United States. Our government has every right to keep India safe, to make India great, and to take whatever measures are necessary for keeping us. When our Indians were deported in most inhuman conditions from the United States, we took them all back. We said, if they are Indians, we'll take them back. The same is true for Rohingyas. They should be sent back to where they belong, which is to Myanmar. The Myanmarese government must be told that they must take back their own citizens. They are all Myanmarese citizens. They should be sent back to Myanmar. Thank you.
Professor Nalapat, what do you believe was the intention of this petition that was filed in the Supreme Court? What were the reasons why this was, this plea was filed in the first place, and how do you react to the Supreme Court's dealing of it?
Well, on a bare reading of the whole petition, basically what he has in mind is, because some Rohingya have been deported, he wants to prevent any further deportations, and Supreme Court has acted very wisely and correctly in saying, sorry, the law has to be followed, and you can't suspend the law. Supreme Court is there to uphold the law, and certainly not to suspend the law. And as for Rohingya, we may say that they're from Myanmar, and technically we are right, but and all that the 10th century they came across. All that there may be some of them like that, but today the bulk of them are basically from Bangladeshi, and essentially they in Myanmar, the reason why the army took action, and of course it was very ruthless action, it should have been a little more gentle, is because that they wanted to have a violent insurrection against Myanmar authorities for their own independent state. And this is the reason why action was taken by the Myanmar authorities. And then most of them, many of them went to Bangladesh and from there to Bengal. And as Ambassador Mukherjee says, to the different corners of India. Now, the point is, these people can always go back to Bangladesh. And as you know, Bangladesh has many people who don't wish India well at all, to put it mildly. So I think there are a huge security risk. I'm glad the government is taking steps to ensure that India is protected from this. Essentially, the protection and the welfare of 1.4 billion Indians is absolutely at the front of every decision that should be taken by government, and the government should look after citizens by protecting them from individuals who may wish them harm and then escape across the border. And unfortunately, as far as Bengal is concerned, it has become a safe haven for a lot of people. I don't know what the Bengal police are doing. I don't know if they realize what a mess they're making of national security in Bengal, and what a bad name they're giving the people of Bengal, who are extremely talented and vibrant people. But I'd like to say, I think the Supreme Court has acted correctly, and I think Government of India will now follow up by ensuring that this kind of element that is certainly not from India, and which several of which wish India harm, that they are sent back. And now the decks have been cleared by this very important judgment of the Supreme Court. And of course, they have another new outstanding Chief Justice Gawai. And I think Chief Justice Gawai's court has delivered a very, very good judgment. And this judgment should now be taken full advantage of. And in my view, as many people as possible should be identified and there as a security risk, and then basically sent across the border of Bengal into Bangladesh, where they'll feel perfectly at home among, unfortunately, the other people of extremist mindset who are there in Bangladesh. I want to end this particular segment, Uday, by telling you it's very important the India-Bangladesh border be better policed. There's a lot of crossing in and out of the India-Bangladesh border. That's a huge security risk. And I think those leaks need to be tied up as soon as possible. Thank you, Uday.
Ashwini, do let me bring you in here. What do you believe the ramifications of this order really are going to be? Ashwini, can you hear me? Okay, I think we've lost him there. Firoz Bakht Ahmed, let me draw you in here. What are the ramifications of this verdict according to the observations also made by the court while throwing out this petition?
Thank you very much for having me in. I would, while we used to study at school, in fact, I would like to add one thing. I read somewhere, sometimes it happens that the law becomes an ass. With all due regards to law, to all its parameters, to all courts. But sometimes, one thing as Ambassador Mukherjee has
we have to exercise some restraint in our language. Firoz Bakht Ahmed, you are on a national channel. I would urge you caution, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. I know about it, but I am telling you something which I studied while I was doing MA in English at Delhi University. I'm just referring. I'm not saying it is like that.
No, right? let's just maintain some restraint. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'll restrain. I'll have, in fact, I'll be restrained. Having said that, let me complete it. You see, sometimes it happens. Of course, the court has told the government on what account are you sending these Rohingyas out. But I was referring to Ambassador Mukherjee and to some extent also Professor Nalapad, that India is not a safe haven for all the people who have actually been suffering. We care for their suffering. India is a humanist state, whether it is the Bangladeshis, or it is Rohingyas or anyone else, or Tibetans. India has given a safe, or even people from Pakistan. India has given them a platform. India has given them safety and life. But when Indians are deported from USA, we accept them. The same parameters should also be accepted for all the all the listeners of Newsx, is that they should be sent back. And if at all Supreme Court says that these are human, then that element of sympathy should also be exercised for them. Then Supreme Court should also suggest some parameters from where the country should bring resources for them. I mean, it's good to be humanistic. It is good to be, nice to people, and especially people like Rohingya who were massacred, who were butchered by their state. Now they are living. See the greatness of India. India has given them shelter, and lakhs and lakhs of them have been massacred in Myanmar itself. So what I mean to say is that they should go back to their state, and India should suggest the UN or whatever, or maybe Uncle Sam, that yes, something, if you sympathize with them, which in all probability one should sympathize with a deported person from any nation, but India is not to give shelter to all such people.
Ambassador Mukherjee, your response to Firoz Bakht Ahmed. Ambassador Mukherjee.
Well, I think the point that Mr. Ahmed is trying to make, if I understood him correctly, is that the deportation should be done in a humane manner. I don't have any problem with that. I would like to add that since I've studied the history of Rohingyas, when they came as Arabs and went freely across the Myanmar undivided India border, they were never regarded as Bengalis, as Indians who spoke Bangla, like I am a Bengali. They all spoke the local Myanmarese language. They were always considered to be part of Myanmar. Now, after that, subsequently, so many hundreds of years later, they were in an insurrection, they wanted an independent state. That is the internal problem of Myanmar. It's not a problem of India. But it is true that many of them were pushed across into the Bangladesh border, and because their conditions were not very humane, they were put in Cox's Bazar, I understand. They tried to push into our country. What I am saying is that they are illegal immigrants and we have to deport them, and the state from where they came have to receive them in the same way as we have received back illegal Indians who have been deported from United States to India in flights. That's what I have understood, Mr. Ahmed. I would add to that I would like to bring to Mr. Ahmed's attention that Rohingyas themselves have never considered themselves to be Indians. If you meet Rohingyas in Bengal, as I have, they don't speak one word of Bangla. They speak the local language of Myanmar. So it is not even as if they are saying that they are Indians. They were never Indians. Even in undivided India, they were not Indians. And yes, I fully agree with him that they should be deported in humane conditions. But that depends on us. That depends on where we are moving them to. So we would have to move them to Bangladesh, which is from where they've crossed over. For the Bangladesh government to arrange for their deportation back to Myanmar. That is what I would have to say in response to Mr. Ahmed. I hope I got him correctly. Thank you.
Naveen Chomal, senior lawyer, has also joined the broadcast now. Naveen Chomal, we are learning, of course, that this plea has been thrown out by the Supreme Court. They also made several big observations. Your interpretation of what transpired and what the ramifications are going to be on the deportation ahead of Rohingyas?
We have to be concerned about the ramifications of the interference of the Supreme Court in all the policy matters of the government. See, it is not a rocket science. All the three pillars of democracy, that is the judiciary, the legislature, as well as the executive. Each one has been given a defined role in our constitution, and each pillar is of the equal length, equal height. So if one pillar tries to become taller than the other pillars, then the structure of a democracy is going to collapse. It is going to tilt. So now it is the legislature, it is a political government who has been voted into power, and they have been bringing their policies to the knowledge of the people beforehand, and on that basis people are voting them into power. So it is their duty to look after the interest of the nation, and the policy making is their role. If the policies are not liked by the citizens or they are not in the interest of the nation, then the citizen of the country, they are the supreme, who can or change the government. But now the Supreme Court judges cannot sit over the decisions of the government at every step and direct them as per their own whims and fancies, that no, we want this to happen, we want that to happen. See, too much of humanity is going to ultimately harm the national interest. These people staying in the ivory towers, they are not going to be affected in any manner. And many of the judges, we know, when the fire catches place in that place, 15 crores to 50 crores are found burnt out there. So that is their honesty towards the nation. So it is high time that we all start speaking the truth and start taking on the judiciary and coming to the issue of the Rohingyas or the illegal immigrants coming to our country. The government has the right to catch them, identify them, and deport them. And the nation should stand behind the government. That is what I want to suggest.
Okay, let me in fact, yes, let me also, quickly draw back Professor Nalapath in at this point as well. Professor Nalapath, as far as now the deportation goes ahead, because it is of course a policy also by the government, do you believe the Supreme Court, these observations will have any bearings now on that policy going ahead or not?
Look, if you make a study of these communities and you make a study of their occupations, you make their study of their crime profile, you will find a very high crime profile, and largely the occupations are, at the lower end of the scale. They're not interested in education, and very frankly, the problem is that such people, unfortunately, become easy pickings for mafias, for terror groups, for smugglers, for narcotics handlers. They become easy pickings. You pay them some small amount of money, they'll carry narcotics for you, they'll smuggle cheerfully for you, and this is what is happening. So my point is, Uday, it's a security risk for 1.4 billion people, and surely 1.4 billion people have some human rights as well. And a basic human right is security. A basic human right is freedom from fear. We have just seen Operation Sindoor against terror, because a situation where terror is absent is a basic human right. And a situation where crime is absent should also be a basic human right. So very frankly, let us please examine the human rights of 1.4 billion people, and the three pillars of a democracy. They are there to safeguard those rights. They are not there to change the universe. They are not there to change the world. They are not there to change anything except protect the people of India and help and the executive is taking decisions designed to protect the people of India. I'm very glad the Supreme Court has stood up and been counted in the matter.
In fact, Ambassador Mukherjee, also, the Supreme Court has interestingly questioned and called out the UN office as well on this report, which they've refused to buy.
Now, may I say?
Yes, please. Professor Nalapath and then Ambassador Mukherjee.
Yeah, UNHCR, frankly, even terror groups have been said, they have come under UNHCR. Frankly, there are some very visible biases in the way it has been functioning, and the kind of individuals whom it has been naming, individuals whom it would be a complete menace to the rest of society. Are you going to put the rights of that individual above that of the rights of the entire society who are threatened by him? I think, Uday, that's an absurd proposition. And frankly, I think the UNHCR is, unfortunately, you have agencies like UNESCO and the UN, which are highly respected. But the UNHCR, frankly, has shown its biases very clearly, which is why these days many governments completely ignore what it says, Uday.
Let me just add, Uday.
Yes, Ambassador Mukherjee.
Let me just add to what Professor Nalapat has said, that India is not a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention. We are not a state party. We have no obligations at all to UNHCR. Nevertheless, as a responsible member of the international community, India has always supported UNHCR in its activities to the extent that they are consonant with India's core national security interests. As far as Rohingyas are concerned, the 1951 Refugee Convention is very clear that a country that is not a state party and has no obligations is not obliged. In fact, even a state party is not obliged if those who have crossed over illegally are involved in activities which are against the national security interests of the country of refuge. In other words, to bring it out more clearly, these Rohingyas have been involved with, and there is lots of evidence, not just with regard to drug trafficking or terrorism, they have been involved in all kinds of crimes, from petty crimes to violent crimes, and many of them have been deported, but others have escaped. Many of them have escaped into parts of India where the police are still hunting for them. Therefore, UNHCR cannot, and I would be surprised if they did, because I know refugee law very well, I'm a human rights expert. UNHCR cannot take out India on this matter, because even if we were a state party to the Refugee Convention, which we are not, we would be within our rights to refuse to take them in. Yes, I agree, as Mr. Ahmed had said earlier, that they should be deported in a humane manner if it's possible. But let me also remind our co-panelists and your audience that there have been many occasions when very rich countries, let me give the example of Australia, which is a party to the Refugee Convention, has not taken in Rohingyas and others floating in boats, ramshackle boats on the ocean, knowing that they're going to be drowned, and have refused. They have put them out into the ocean. So I think that before we start, as always, criticizing ourselves, because that seems to be a national, we should really think about our core interests. And I fully agree that our humanitarian standards are better than most countries, including many developed countries. But in this particular case, we have to do what is required to be done, and we have to do it firmly and push them back across the border with Bangladesh. And it is for Bangladesh to decide how to push them back to Myanmar, or keep them. It's up to them. Or to ask the UN for help. The UNHCR is a very rich agency. It is very well funded. So it is for UNHCR to help Bangladesh. I am not sure. I don't think Bangladesh either is a signatory. I have to check that point on Google, onto the 1951 Refugee Convention. Thank you.
All right, my thanks to all of our guests for joining us. We've run totally out of time on this particular discussion. Let's slip into a very short break. Thanks to our viewers as well for being with us.